Christian parenting.
Welcome to the Living Wholehearted podcast. We are Jeff and Tara Matson, a husband and wife team who is shrinking the integrity gap in our own lives and helping others do the same. I'm a leadership and organizational development coach, and Tara is a licensed marriage and family therapist.
We believe that if you have a following, you are a leader, and how you lead matters. Whether you are leading in the home, work, or community, we are bringing you biblical, clinical, and relational wisdom to help you in every relationship that matters most to you. None of us do this perfectly, but we are leaning into the reality of our humanity and profound wisdom of grace.
It's been a hard year to say the least. 2020 has been in the records for global trauma. Though we understand that suffering is a deep part of most of our stories, as we sit with our coaching and counseling clients, we don't like to talk about it, and we definitely don't like to feel its effects. However, more than ever, we need stories of hope in the midst of suffering. How do we move through the pain and not let it consume us, especially when we can't see an ending in sight?
That's why we're bringing you stories of hope in the darkness. Particularly in the Northwest, we struggle with higher levels of depression and anxiety through the cloudy winters, and we're heading into that season. This year's going to be even harder. So there are some key principles we can learn from those who live with suffering on a daily basis. So we have brought you our friends, Ted and Ally Hotchkiss, with us today. Welcome.
Thanks, guys. We're happy to be here.
Well, we know you as Teddy and Ally, so we're going to probably be going that direction. But before we dive into a lot of the pain of your story, we'd love to just hear the beginning. How you guys met. Everybody loves a love story. So let's hear how the two of you came together.
Yeah, so we met when we were 19 in college through some mutual friends, and we would see each other and talk briefly every now and then, but neither of us were really in the right emotional place to see the other for who they were. We ran into each other several times over the next 4 years, but we were always kind of like ships passing each other at the wrong time until one night it just changed. We saw each other at a going away party for a friend, and it was like all of a sudden we both saw each other completely differently for the first time, and it was pretty much game over from there. We started going out dancing together with our friend groups and talking for countless hours every day. And we just became best friends. And a year later, we got engaged and married and haven't looked back since.
Very good. How'd you do, Ted?
Yeah, that was great. Yeah. She didn't specify what kind of dancing, though. And I didn't want there to be any confusion. It's a very rare form of Taekwondo style dance.
You guys are
no, I'm just kidding. It was country two-step line dancing, and it was a blast. It was so much fun. And I have an older brother and a younger brother, and so the three of us and Allie and her friends, we'd go out, and there was a really cool place from where we're from in North Scottsdale called Buffalo Chip, and they had live bull riding on Wednesday and Friday nights, and we'd watch the bull rides, and we would go in and dance our hearts out, and then it was just fun. And they had fire pits there, and you'd get marshmallows from the kitchen and go roast them. So it was such a fun time to, like she said, notice each other for the first time, and then we were just having a blast. Yeah, we were just two kids in love, really.
Yeah, I could see you guys there, man. I want to be at the Buffalo Chip. I mean, it's like, that sounds perfect, right? And
yeah, they actually had fence posts out front where people would ride their horses up and tie their horses.
Wow.
To
Oh,
it.
yeah.
Still
Oh,
to this
yeah.
day. Yeah.
That's the spirit. You got some true cowboys in there, and folks
wow.
that love that lifestyle. In my heart, that is so. I would love to be there.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you guys have such a beautiful story, and the start is no exception. And you took us there. When along the way did you know that you, Allie, would be facing some of the physical struggles that you have today, and maybe explain what life is like for you guys today and take us back to when you found out. And this is not an easy transition, but you guys have done such an awesome job of integrating really the happy and the hard.
Yeah, so my daily life is pretty limited. I'm able to leave our apartment on average about 2 times a month, and Teddy has to stay home full time as the caregiver to me and to our 2 girls. And my main interaction with the world is the part time hours that I'm able to work from my bed for a ministry called True Face. My primary condition is called Ehlers Danlos Syndrome, or EDS, and it's caused several other conditions in my body over the years. EDS is genetic, so I was born with it, but I wasn't diagnosed until I was 25 after starting to look for answers with my parents around age 9. I've had chronic pain and frequent dislocations in a majority of my joints, along with other complications since I was a child, so I don't really know a life without it. But EDS is rare, and a lot of the interactions with the medical community growing up just made me feel like I had to be making things up because no one could explain it. I really thought that this is just what everyone's body was like until we found a rheumatologist about a year after we were married who was able to diagnose me within minutes of being in his office. It was an amazing, hope-filled day for Teddy and I because we finally had answers that we thought that we would never get, but it was also a day that began a lifelong grieving and acceptance process for us. We had to make many immediate life changes that day, and we were also told I would likely need a wheelchair by my mid-30s, which I ended up no longer being able to delay that by age 28, and that there was no cure. So it was a very difficult day when we found out, but also a hope-filled day to finally have some answers.
It's so well said, because that's often the not knowing is so painful. But then when you have an actual diagnosis, the reality, like you said, it took time to really accept that, and the grieving kind of began at a different level. So you guys have been married for how long now?
6 years.
6 years. And you were newlyweds when you found this out. So most couples never imagine facing these kinds of struggles, the day-to-day pain that you face, Ally and Teddy, being her caregiver. What have you both learned in your journey with God and each other that helps you find hope in the midst of your suffering?
Yeah, so we've learned that our base presupposition has to be that he's trustworthy. And it has to be the premise on which all other conclusions are formed. In moments where our circumstances are providing overwhelming evidence that our reality is hopeless, hope comes from the conclusion that our circumstances don't have the final say over our reality, that God gets that right. So in a time of suffering, I cannot go to my circumstances alone to form a conclusion about my reality. I have to include the Father in on the meeting between me and my circumstances. Jesus' circumstances provided overwhelming evidence that his reality was a hopeless one. And thank God, though, he didn't listen to those alone. He listened to his Father. And by doing so, accomplished a work that in turn gave me a father, his Father. That interaction with the Father, where the truth about who we are and the reality of my suffering are all discussed, begin at my personal conclusion that he is trustworthy, not at my pastor's conclusion, not at my circumstances conclusion, but at my own personal conclusion of his trustworthiness. Because I have concluded that he is in fact trustworthy, then the logic follows that his trustworthiness deems him worthy to wait on. And if he's worthy to wait on, then I can risk saying, let's see what he wants to do with this. And my suffering becomes the thing I am walked through with rather than the thing I have to get through to get to him. If I have not concluded that he is trustworthy yet, then I have to start there. I have to examine him and interact with him in a way that says, God, I don't trust you. If you really are trustworthy, will you show me? And I have to be that brutally honest with him and then interact with him honestly there. And he's not intimidated by my honesty or our honesty. He actually prefers it to our platitudes and our offerings that come from a place of us saying what we think he wants us, what we think he wants to hear from us. Everything has to come from that brutal honesty, because the luxury of living a life where we just pass through it and just say the things that we think he might want to hear from us, we no longer have that luxury. It has to really be a brutally honest conversation with him about what we're feeling, what we're experiencing, what we're going through, and talking to him about our life. And for me, that's been one of the huge things that has been accomplished in our life through this.
That's the deep end of the pool kind of stuff right there, Ted. And you saying what you said, and this is why we just stayed quiet, because it couldn't be said better. I'm curious here, just what are some of the things, how has the Father, how has the Son and the Holy Spirit engaged you in that wrestling as you go to him, as you choose to make yourself essentially speak the words that you believe that he's trustworthy, as you choose to believe that he's trustworthy, as you get out all of the emotions that say the converse to him, because he's able and prefers to handle those things. Like what do you hear back from God? What do you feel from him in return when you come to him with that kind of honesty?
Yeah, so he has never once called me a victim. And he's never once said that, Ted, you and your family are barely scraping by. He's never used those words to describe me and my family. He's always used the words, I love you, and I am fully aware of what you're going through. I am right here with you. I am not punishing you. I am not mean. I am here to interact with you, and I'm here to take care of you. And as much as I am willing to risk trusting him with that is the extent to which I get to experience this incredibly fulfilling life that he has given us. The things that Ally and I get to hear from him are humbling and kind, always so kind. The three of them are the kindest people we know.
I love that. That's a great way of saying it. Allie, how about you? Thank you, Ted. Thank you for saying the things that you just shared. Allie, how about you? What would you say as to how God has met you and is meeting you guys, and what do you feel from him and hear from him?
It's really, Teddy put it very well. I'll have hard days physically, and sometimes emotionally I'm still doing okay on those days. And then other days the emotions will just knock me out because I didn't anticipate having that hard of a day. Like today, the day when we're doing this podcast with you guys, has been an incredibly hard day for us. And emotionally, it's been difficult too because I didn't see this one coming. But I know that he's just always here and I'm not alone in it. And that really helps me a lot to just be reminded that he's in this. He sees what I'm going through and what I'm feeling today. And he's the witness to it, which sometimes it's just nice having a witness be in this with us.
Oh man, you guys, let's just get the Kleenex box already. We've been wiping the tears. Let's talk a little bit now about how community is a part of this journey with you. You've talked about the communion that you have with your the kindest people you know, the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. But what have you two discovered that you need from your community? Maybe tell us a little bit about what you found out that you also don't need as well.
Yeah, so financial gifts, groceries, tangible needs being met, and even far beyond just base needs, but hopes, wants, and dreams have all come through God's provision, through people around us. And all of these things have been an incredible, incredible part of our story. And we can't express how grateful we are to those people who've stepped in and trusted God with their finances and followed the leading placed on their heart to help us in these ways. Allie and I have been brought to tears of joy and gratitude more in the last year than in the rest of our life previously. Saying thank you as a way to express our gratitude falls short of how we feel and what these people's actions have meant to us. So I want to say all that to preface what I want to say next, because I don't want to be misunderstood. We're incredibly grateful to those who have been a part of our life in that way. On the other side of this coin, though, I would be disingenuous if I did not talk about how incredibly isolating this journey has been. What we are noticing as a common reaction to our life is that people feel if they cannot provide groceries or financial help or something from that list I previously mentioned, then they don't have anything to offer to us at all and have no place in our life. And this notion that the only way to have a place in our life is through these avenues is false. I would like to say that people who are hearing this, who maybe know or have people in their community who are suffering, you personally have something to offer and have value beyond what you are able to give financially or through groceries. We're so grateful for all those areas of our life that have been taken care of and for those needs that have been met in those ways. And if you feel led to do that for someone, then do it. But what we found that we also need from a community is a willingness to not shy away from the discomfort that comes from being present with someone who is suffering. There's no expectation from me or Allie that our community would have the answers or the fix for what we're going through. And as humans, we can experience an overwhelming amount of anxiety and even personal hopelessness when someone we interact with is going through something we have no control over with. Whether it's a homeless person on the side of the road, a family member going through a health crisis, or a friend experiencing hardship, the discomfort we experience from being an onlooker to another's pain is enough to cause most people to pull away, and not out of an intention to harm, but out of an intention to self-protect from the uncomfortable emotions that come from those situations. And what we find ourselves asking the people who are part of our trusted friends is this: if you didn't feel like you had to fix anything to save us or to support us in any way, how would that free you to interact with us? That if those emotions of sadness or helplessness you feel when you see Allie and my life didn't have to lead you to having to feel like you have to do more or fix something, would allow you to just be present with us, to just love us and be loved as our friends. The assumption that someone suffering has no love to give is a false one. That you can't expect them to be a friend to you because what they're going through. It's kind not wanting to put more expectations on them, but it's not something that they need. And that interacting with a person who is suffering would require too much sacrifice on your part because you not get something in return, because it's not fair of you to expect anything from them. I would just say that that's not entirely true. As a member of a community where you have a suffering person in your midst, I would propose that what that person needs is for their community to continue to invite them to life events, knowing that their participation will be limited, if anything at all. Most likely the invitation will be turned down even, but the inclusion of them and what that invitation can mean to someone can have a profound effect on that person. What you're really saying is that the limited suffering version of you is better than not having you at all. So when discussing these points with others, I found that a common rebuttal is, well, people just want to help, which I agree. I would say that if you want your efforts to help someone to be maximized, though, with the ultimate goal that they would feel loved, then a committed relationship with quality time should have priority as well, as much as, being able to step in financially or anything like that, but just quality time with people. Allie and I have friends who come to mind where they have, in the midst of the pain, just remained. I remember Allie was sitting on the porch and she started to have an episode where half of her face was drooping. Her speech was slurred. She was no longer able to move half of her body. It resembles like a stroke. It presents itself in that way. The first time we experienced it, we thought that's what was going on. We soon found out that's not what was going on, but these friends who were with us, this was their first time seeing it. And that could be incredibly uncomfortable. What they did was so loving and kind. They just, Allie's friend, the girl, just reached out and touched her shoulder and said, "Hey, are you okay? If you don't have to talk anymore, if it's too hard for you, is it okay if I just, continue the conversation and talk to you?" But she didn't pull away and just sat there with her. And those friends have nothing that they can offer us financially or physically through the meeting of needs or groceries or anything like that. But what they've offered us has been so incredibly important and valuable to us through this journey and going through this.
Yeah, so I hear you saying several things, and it's well said, Teddy, because it is uncomfortable for humanity. We'll just put everybody in there for us to sit in the midst of suffering and pain. We could take extreme measures to avoid pain, to avoid feeling negative emotions, right? We live in a culture that does not go there very easily. And what you're saying is you're so grateful for the tangible, practical gifts, and those are needed, and you have great gratitude for that. But what is most meaningful is when people are willing to be in a committed relationship on the down days, and the higher days, but to just be present with you, to not shy away from the hard, to not try to fix, but just getting to enjoy you both as people and knowing that you have something to contribute to their lives. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, totally. Jesus did this incredible thing when someone was brought to him who was sick and on a mat, and he said to him, "Your sins are forgiven. Get up, and you're healed now, and rise." What he did there was he acknowledged all of the person's needs. He had a need to be physically healed, but there's also this need that had to be met for his salvation. And it was kind of like, if you can't do one and just exclude the other, there's something that has to be done. And the way that Jesus meets us is he does both of those things. It's kind of like he says, what's the point of healing you if I'm not going to save your soul? But what's the point of saving your soul if I'm not going to take care of your day-to-day needs? The two go hand in hand. And so he meets us there. And so as humans, when we interact with others, what we're doing is we're saying, yeah, of course you have physical needs, but I also want to acknowledge that there are emotional needs there that I can meet just by being present and loving you where you're at.
So good. Well, as we wrap up, Ally, would you leave us with a word of hope? Maybe speak to the person who cannot face another day in their journey and they're just feeling like they want to give up. What do they need to know today to just keep going?
I would say that you're never alone in your suffering. God never leaves you for a second. And there are many others out here who are in a similar boat who can relate with you. I'd also say that God is worth trusting with this hardship. It's worth waiting to see what will come from it and how it will change you and how He can use it. There's several unexpected ways that this suffering has brought good into our life that I truly don't think would be here if we hadn't gone through what we have.
Well, thank you, Ted and Ally, for all you're willing to share. This is really rich and deep and important. Your life, your message here, and many are going to be touched. If you want to know more about their story, go to @Ally Hotch. That's the @ symbol ALLYHOTCH.
We hope you've found validation, some hope, and encouragement for such a time as this. There are a lot of us out in the community who are suffering. And if you're not in the midst of such hardship, there are people right next door to you, your friends, your family, like Teddy was talking about, who are really longing for someone to come and be present, to see them, and to walk with them. Join us next week as we're going to continue our conversation with Ted and Ally Hotchkiss on Hope in the Darkness. We've got more to hear from them, so look forward to understanding more of the principles that they've learned, both as moving through the suffering and as Teddy's become Ally's caretaker. So thank you, too, for sharing so openly.
This podcast is powered by Living Wholehearted, Courageous Girls, and the Christian Parenting Podcast Network. Thank you for joining us in this critical movement of shrinking our integrity gaps between what we preach and live.